Welcome to the Strong, Single and Human podcast, a real look at single parenting, how to navigate the ups and downs of life with kids on your own while keeping sane. We cover all manner of subjects from domestic violence, dealing with childhood trauma, through to fussy eaters and how to help your kids become resilient. I'm your host, Claire Martin. Welcome. This week's guest is a parenting expert, astrologer and author. She writes positive parenting books based on astrology in order to help parents have the best, strongest relationship possible with their children. She offers a unique perspective on astrology and positive parenting, including reparenting as an adult in order to better parent our children. She was a single mum for a few years, now remarried, and her divorce prompted a review of her life, and she realised that she needed to heal from childhood trauma, including the death of her father and narcissistic abuse. She began using astrology, including the study of the birth charts, to become a better parent, and she has written 2 parenting books and published regular astrology and parenting content on her YouTube channel. One of her main tenets is that parents should respect children's intrinsic natures rather than pressure children to be how the parents want. She calls this tendency parenting from a place of ego, since it's more about fulfilling the parents' ego and needs than the children's soul needs. Welcome, Marie Riegger. Welcome to the podcast. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Claire, for having me. Very excited to be here.
No, that's cool. That's cool. So tell us a bit about yourself and who you are.
It's a tall order of a question. I'll be as brief as possible. So I am an attorney by day. I'm in the United States. I'm an author by night. And I write, in addition to fiction books, I write parenting books, and I incorporate astrology, astrological principles, and positive parenting into my parenting books. And so that's kind of like one of my passions. I've come a long way on my own parenting journey, and now I'm kind of sharing those insights with other parents.
Wow. Okay. So I said a little bit about childhood trauma and you realizing you needed to heal from childhood trauma, etc. What was your turning point? What made you realize that you had childhood trauma and then that you needed to heal it as such? Like, how was it manifesting itself?
Sure. That is a wonderful question and a very deep question. So, my father, no, it's fine. It's a great question because I think it's helpful for people like on their own healing journey to kind of tease that out so they can be self-aware, right, of the need for healing. So, my father died in an accident when I was very young, and then I also, as a child, suffered narcissistic abuse from my remaining parent, my living parent. So that was tough. And if anyone who's familiar with narcissistic abuse knows that it's a kind of a long-term psychological, emotionally draining type of abuse. And it's hard for a child to understand. It's almost impossible for a child to understand what's happening.
I was going to say.
Right. So basically when I had my son, who is now 12, when he was very little, like around 2 or 3, I was kind of carrying on the same parenting practices, how I was parented. And I realized at some point how harmful it was. I was yelling, I was causing him this trauma, and I was harming my attachment with him and my connection with him. And I remember very clearly thinking one day, there has to be a better way of doing this. I am not parenting the right way. I don't really know how to do better, but I'm going to figure this out. So that's kind of what started this whole thing. And it was actually starting to read about parenting and going to therapy, my own therapy sessions, and reading about early childhood development. That's when I realized how harmful my own childhood had been, the way I was parented, how harmful it was, how it set me up to have all kinds of problems as an adult, extreme people pleasing, poor boundaries, things like that. And I realized that sometimes parents even unwittingly cause their children to be conditioned negatively like that. It's not that they intend that. It's just that they're using the techniques they know, and sometimes those techniques will cause the children to grow up into adults with these issues, emotional issues, relationship issues. Right. So that was kind of what started the whole thing. And that was 12 years ago when my son was born. So that was sort of this whole process where the original impetus was to improve my parenting, and it started me on this whole kind of healing journey, which included reparenting myself.
Wow. Yeah. And you're right. You are right. It's at the end of the day, I suppose we learn our parenting from our parents, because they're the only people who parented us, right? At the end of the day. So,
right. And that's your model for all future relationships.
But then they learn to parent from their parents as such, and so on and so forth. And all of the trauma, I mean, coming from the UK, we had 2 world wars in the UK. So you had all of the trauma from those, those wars, affecting people, PTSD that wasn't really a thing way back then, that people were dealing with and going through, and just basically getting on with allegedly normal lives, but it was manifesting itself in so many different ways. And and so basically it's not anybody's fault as such. I agree with you. It's about stopping that cycle, stopping that continuation of parenting as such in a negative way. And hats off to you for doing that.
Right, absolutely.
I do, and I'm a shouter as well. I think it's just my natural makeup. There have been times, and I can think in the last 2 weeks, where I've gone, oh my God. And I still do it, but then you go, oh, that's just not an effective way of doing it. And
the important thing is when that happens, you catch yourself and you apologize to your child.
Yes.
No parent is perfect. That's not going to happen. But if you know, I messed up, and you tell your child, I mean, your child is 7, I think. He's 7, right?
6. He's 6. He'll be 7 in October.
So he's still old enough to understand the apology.
Yeah.
Right. So if you apologize and say, hey, I lost my cool, a lot of things going on right now, I'm stressed about a lot of things, that is a great way to then bond, because, a child seeing that the parent apologizes to them, that makes the child feel important, that they matter, their feelings matter, their mental state matters. And that actually goes a long way toward bonding. So that's perfectly fine.
Yeah.
There's nothing wrong with that. We all mess up, and it's how you handle the mistake.
And I think it's good to show your child that we all mess up. Like at the end of the day, they're going to mess up. I mean, I've messed up right royally in my life, right? But but I think it's important to show and to sort of not make out that you are perfect parent 101, because they're going to think, oh God, I've messed up, I can't say anything, and so yeah.
Right.
No, I agree. But okay, so I have another question for you then.
Sure.
So I understand about all of the healing your trauma. I understand completely. We all have trauma as well, because it's misunderstandings as such. I mean, yours is probably not misunderstandings, but sometimes it can be, as a child, you misunderstand or misinterpret a situation that gives you trauma, because you tend to focus and say, oh, it's all about me, I must be this person, when actually it wasn't. And if it's not explained to you, then it's all about you then, and you can misinterpret and cause your own trauma as such as well. But I have to ask, why astrology? Like, how did astrology come into the mix?
I get that question a lot. So I will tell you, I'll give you the short version. I'll try to. I've been kind of interested in astrology as a hobby, like all my young life, like from a kid on up. And as I got older, I'm a very logical person. Things kind of have to make sense to me, right? And as I got older, I saw and experienced patterns with the energy, like people with particular birth chart placements exhibited particular traits or particular characteristics, or could be more introverted or more extroverted, or approach the world from a place of logic or a place of emotion and intuition. And as the years progressed and I saw these patterns so consistently, I determined there must be some merit to studying this, particularly the study of the birth chart, which is a snapshot of the position of the planets at the moment of the person's birth. So I started to study it more intently, and I found it helpful as a tool for kind of self-knowledge and reparenting, along with all the other tools, psychotherapy, self-help books, cognitive behavioral therapy. All these things are helpful, EMDR, obviously. So astrology is just another tool to help self-knowledge. And in talking to other adults who are in my position of kind of healing from childhood trauma, reparenting themselves, a common theme I hear with them is that they had been people pleasers for so long that they don't even know who they are, what they want out of life, because they've been so attuned to pleasing other people all the time, starting with the parents, that they don't know. So the birth chart can actually help with that, because the birth chart will tell you things like how you tend to approach life, whether you approach life more from a place of rationality, logic, or a place of emotion and intuition. It'll tell you what you need to feel safe in relationships, how you recharge your energy, how you deal with your emotional world. Are you more stoic emotionally, or you wear your emotions on your sleeve? Things like that. So it's a good starting point for people to kind of understand themselves. And when I talk to people about the birth charts and I explain and ask questions, a lot of what I talk about with them resonates very strongly, because they felt like they had to repress their own characteristics as children. So I do find it very helpful for that, to start that process of self-knowledge, as long as obviously people are open to studying it. Not everyone is, and that's fine. But yeah. So from the point of, so it's obviously helpful to study in relationships, and it's helpful in parent-child relationships, because one of the issues I found was that a lot of parents tend to project their own characteristics, needs, wants, preferences on the children. They assume the children are kind of carbon copies of themselves. That's obviously not true. Right.
God, no.
So it's not true.
Well, so I mean, there are traits that my son has that are similar to me, but he's so his own person.
He has half your chromosomes. So yeah, there are going to be some similarities. Yeah. But and I have several examples I could use of my son and me, where I was kind of found myself projecting my own traits and preferences onto him. And that's where studying the child's birth chart is helpful, because it will guide you to their specific intrinsic characteristics, as opposed to the parents. So that is helpful. And then you can, looking at the parent's birth chart and the child's birth chart, you can kind of help the parent understand how to relate to the child. Some children are extremely independent. Some children are, like my son is a Scorpio son with a lot of Scorpio placements. He needs a lot of attachment. He needs a lot of connection. He's very emotional. If I raise my voice even a little bit, it's very triggering for him. Other kids may not bother them as much, but it bothers him. So things like that. We're a house
of Librians, so don't even go there. And my dad's a Libra as well, and I'm a Libra, and my son's a Librian, and so we're just hopeless.
Well, Libra's a great sign, because Libra children, so Libra is very relationship oriented. So the Libra children are just very prone to attach to the parents. Other kids are way more independent and kind of want to separate earlier from the parent. But Libra children, they're so relationship oriented that they seek attachment so closely with a parent that's good for you, because that makes that attachment a little bit easier. So yeah, and obviously if you have the same sun sign, you kind of innately understand that about him. So it takes less effort for you to understand it. Parents who have energy that's very different from the children, it takes them a lot more effort to understand the child. It's possible, it just takes more effort. But if you have similar energy, it takes you less effort. It feels a little bit more natural. So that can be helpful. It can be a little less work sometimes.
Yeah, maybe. But I have to say, what you're talking about, your astrology, right? And when you talk about birth charts and all of this stuff, this isn't like the astrology you read in the newspapers, where it goes, Libra, you're going to have a fluffy day and all of this stuff. And, you're going to get a winning soon and all of this. That is completely different to what you're doing, isn't it?
That's correct. So what you read in the newspaper about horoscopes, like your horoscope outlook for the day, that's generally for fun. We're talking about, right, studying the position, sign and house position of the planet at the moment of one's birth. So it's very specific to that person. And you could have charts that are similar or around the same time, but it is extremely specific to that person. So yeah, and you have to be very careful with reading charts for children, because like I don't do predictive astrology where you can look at transits, upcoming transits, and kind of tell people, well, this looks like this is going to happen, future, or this is going to happen. Right. I don't do that because for many reasons. For kids, it's kind of unethical because they're young and they have their whole life ahead of them and a lot can change. And if you spend so much time, even for adults, if you spend so much time trying to predict what's going to happen, you're not living in the moment as much. And that's obviously very important for relationships. So yeah, so you have to be careful about doing the predictive astrology. It's fine to look at transits and think, oh, well, this difficult transit is coming up, and I know that these tough feelings I have now will pass. That's one thing. But trying to pinpoint when things are going to happen, what's going to happen, that's a little bit more challenging, because part of what I teach is you need to kind of flow with the energy, like the parent flows with the child's energy. And that's easier than being oppositional and authoritarian, as you kind of let the child guide you and you kind of structure the relationship with the child to get the attachment and connection based on, the child's needs. So yeah, that's what I'm talking about.
Okay. And like, I know you've mentioned, I know you mentioned on your website about tendency parenting. Okay. And
right.
So tendency parenting, from what I understand it from yourself, is where you, and tendency parenting is probably the wrong phraseology that I'm using, but that's where the parent will want the child to be like them, or to do to be great at sports, or so they're like living their life vicariously through their children, which, it's not helicopter parenting, is it? Because helicopter parenting is just where they won't let them do it.
It's a bit different.
But yeah, right. I'm trying to think what it would be called out in the big wide world. But yes, is that what you're meaning?
Right. So I call that kind of parenting from a place of ego because, as you said, it's about kind of living vicariously through the child, like getting the child to do what the parent wants because it makes the parent look good. Like if a child has good grades, if a child is a very social person with a lot of friends, very popular, like does all these things, is well liked, does sports, like you said, has all these accomplishments. But at the end of the day, a lot of parents, I find, push the children to do those things or be those, get the good grades and be that way because it makes the parent look good in society, right? That it feeds the parent's ego. So it's not about the child, what's good for the child. And an example I use is I see a lot of parents, you have to get good grades, you have to get good grades. But you have to be careful about that because you never want the child to associate their worth with grades or anything extrinsic to themselves. Human beings are worthy because they are human beings. Full stop, the end. So the message you're saying to the kids is potentially, well, you're only a worthy person if you get good grades. No, school is about, in my opinion, learning this material because it will serve you in life. The grades are a reflection of how well you're learning the material. If you need help, we'll get you help. Like, I don't think it's a good idea to punish kids for bad grades. You need to figure out what's going on. Why are they not motivated to get the good grades? Or why do they not care? Or do they have a learning disability that needs to be addressed? That's the point, is to prepare them for adult life. It's not the grades. It's not the end. That's a common example I use. So, but it's about. But
it's sorry to cut over you there. I mean, but it's also to like my son's just had reports come through, and he's just excelled in 3 new subjects, right? And I sit there and go, wow, okay, that's really good. And I said to him, wow, you must have really worked hard at doing really well at like maths, Maths is one of them, and I love maths. So because there's only me and him, right? And he sits there and goes, oh God, at dinner times, I get him up the table and he just looks at me and goes, oh God, I haven't got to sit here and talk to you, have I? Like, or again for another night, I want to go sit in front of the TV or whatever and just veg out, right? And I'm like, no. And we have a conversation and we do stuff. Mm-hmm. Like maths problems, or like we play games that are mathsy orientated, or, you know, and like just to do something so he's not looking at me going, can we phone Nana so I can talk to somebody else? You know, it's like, God love him, but he does live with me 24/7, so, you know. But you know, I try not to take it personally, and so, you know, he's worked really hard at it. So I said, well, hey, look, because you've worked really hard, let's go and get, you know, you can have a little prezi because you worked really hard at it, you know, well done. But I'm really cognizant of like rewarding as well, because you go, oh, sure, is he going to expect something? You know, you can't do it all the time. But like 4, I went, okay, that's really good. So, but yeah, look, I agree with you. It's a fine line though, because you so want them to do well.
That's the thing. It's really, you are riding a very fine line between kind of letting them be independent, but also guiding them, because the consequences of poor grades there are consequences. So, you know, my son is old enough that I could tell him, if you get poor grades, or if you don't care about the grades, these are the potential consequences. It's up to you, but these are the consequences. Now, he's very diligent. I actually have the opposite issue with him. I have to tell him, dude, you're fine. Like, calm down. Like, don't stress about this test or this art project.
But they do.
They stress. Yeah. And that's something that we struggle with, because like this year they had a lot of art projects that were not even graded. It was like a pass-fail system. And he was stressed. And I told him, look, this is not even for a grade. It doesn't even factor into your grades. It's pass-fail. I literally told him, you could slop any old stuff on there and they'll give you an A or B or pass for effort. So that's the issue I have with him, is like, just take it easy. Why are you putting so much stress on yourself? So, yeah.
But is that down to his birth chart? Is that down to who he is as a child? Have you done his birth chart?
Oh, yeah, I've done his chart. Yeah, he's very intense and he is very focused, and that comes across in his schoolwork. He's very focused. Yeah. And so we kind of let him be. Like, there was a time I would check his homework. Did you get everything right? And I said, that's too much.
You don't need to do
too
that.
Helicoptering. Now I'll ask him, did you do your homework? Yes. Fine. No problem. And I'll check his grades like once a month, just to make sure he's learning the material. And that's it. That's all we do. Because, you know, he's independent enough that he can be in charge of himself. And that's normal childhood development. As they get older, they take on more age-appropriate responsibility, more age-appropriate independence, and that's what you want. So, yeah. Absolutely. But you've got to, it's fine to guide children and explain to them the potential consequences of actions. If you don't study for this test, this may happen. That's fine. I would caution people with rewarding, like you're suggesting, rewarding the outcome. Like, you had the perfect response. You must have worked really hard. I hope you're proud of yourself for working so hard, not for the grade or the mark, for working hard, right? That's what you praise the effort. And that's it. And you never tell them.
Because otherwise you're hanging on that grade, aren't you?
Exactly.
And the thing is, like, if they don't get an A next time and they get a B, they feel as though they've failed.
Exactly.
And you go, well, there's many different reasons. It could be that the teacher was having an off day. There's just an aspect that you don't really get. Well, that's okay. Just work a bit harder and like study and read something different, or you might just not be good at it. Like, I was rubbish at English, would you believe? Like, and I hated it. Had extra lessons, and I absolutely hated it. Hate writing, and my job means that I write lots and lots, and I hate writing. Although I'd always wanted to write a novel, but that ain't going to happen because I hate it. But this is okay. I love talking, love maths, so I could do those. The guys come
interesting. Everyone has different aptitudes, right? It's not better or worse. People just have different strengths. And obviously that's one of the things great about our world, right? People have different characteristics and different aptitudes. But yeah.
So, okay. So no living precariously for our kids. Like what?
Right.
Why do we not need to do that? I mean, I think it's a no-brainer because it just sends them spiraling down into deep, dark depression because they feel like they've failed us. But like, how do we not do that? How do we stop doing that?
How do we not do that? Right.
And sorry, another question.
No, you're fine.
Another question, because I'm quite interested in this. Like, is it that there are certain star signs or certain people that are have more of a tendency to do this than others? Oh, look at that.
So yes,
you nodded.
So I'll take your first question.
Yeah, sorry.
So how do we not? No, you're fine. How do we not? I could talk about this all day, Claire. How do we not live vicariously through the children? Okay. First of all, make sure that you are not sending the message that your love and affection is conditional on anything the child does. Love for the child, love it in general, should be unconditional. You love the child, period, the end. That's it. Doesn't matter what they do. So you could tell them nothing when they exhibit stress about something, grades or whatever, their performance, nothing you could do could ever make me love you any less. You have to be very careful about that. Do not withhold approval. Do not withhold affection and attachment because of anything they do, right? Because of any achievement. Like if they're on a sports team and don't win the game, you don't withhold approval. You praise the effort. You don't withhold affection. Yeah, that's how I was raised. I was raised that kind of love was transactional, that relationships were transactional. You do this for me and I do this for you. That's not healthy. It's not healthy with a parent-child dynamic. It's not healthy with a husband and wife dynamic, a partner-partner dynamic. So that's the first thing is you make sure you're not withholding affection. And it's hard sometimes. It's impossible for people to live together and not be irritated once in a while, including parents and children.
Yeah.
And it's fine to say, hey, what you said irritating me. I'll tell my son, what you said hurt my feelings. Has no bearing on my feelings for you, my love for you, but it did hurt my feelings in that moment.
Yeah.
That's all fine. So that's the kind of number one is you never withhold affection, attention, love because of achievement or lack of achievement or their performance on anything, right? So yeah, that's kind of the big thing. And then the other thing is to remember that just because the parent has preferences, has traits, skills, does not mean the children are going to have the same preferences, traits, skills. Okay. They're obviously different. Like we talked about, they're different people, they're different beings, so their own sentient being. And there's a parenting expert, Dr. Shafali Sabari, who wrote this groundbreaking book called The Conscious Parent, which is all about that. How children are intrinsic beings, their own intrinsic beings, their own sovereign beings separate from the parent. And while they need guidance, they need to learn about boundaries, that should be respected. The fact that they are not carbon copies of the parent. They're not there to fulfill some grand plan of the parent. That's not healthy. Right. So now your second question about the energies. Yes, there are some, no, why are you sorry? There are some astrological energies that tend to be more controlling than others. So what I see, when we talk about earth signs, we talk about Capricorn, Virgo, and Taurus, and we talk about modalities. So each sign can be either cardinal, mutable, or fixed. So cardinal energy is always intent on moving forward, achievement, progression. Fixed energy is focused on stabilizing things, maintaining things, changing them so they were as they were before. Fixed energy signs have a tougher time with transition. Mutable signs can go either way, like the term suggests. They can exhibit fixed or cardinal traits. So Capricorn is cardinal earth, Virgo is mutable earth. So those signs in parents can exhibit, I hesitate to say controlling behavior, but because Virgo is very concerned with being organized and precise, yes, and Capricorn is concerned with achievement. And they're earth signs, so they are partly focused on material goods and material achievements. When those parents have a lot of Virgo or Capricorn energy in their charts, there's almost always a risk for being too controlling of the child or for putting too much emphasis on material achievements toward the child. So if you're a person with a parent with a Virgo sun, a Virgo moon, Capricorn sun, or Capricorn moon, pay attention to that. Ask yourself, when you're pushing your children to do something, ask yourself, why am I pushing them to do this? Why? And if the only thing you can come up with is because I want them to do it, well, that's not a good reason. If there's a better reason, like for them to be safe, for them to learn something, for them to broaden their horizons, all those are laudable goals. But if you only want them to do something because you want them to do it, you really need to think very carefully about pressuring them to do that or trying to get them to do that. And I get a lot of questions from parents like, how do I get my child to do X? Well, you really don't. I mean, you don't. I mean, you can guide them, you can teach about natural consequences, and that's all you can do, especially when they're older, adolescents, teens, and older. That's all you can do. But yeah, I mean, there are other zodiac energies can be controlling. Fire signs, so Leo, Aries, and Sagittarius. Fire signs, just because of the nature of the sign, because they're ego-oriented, it makes it a little bit more challenging for them to detach and see things from the other person's point of view. So parents who have a lot of fire energy from their chart, which is fine, being ego-oriented is fine. They're good at self-championing. They're good at standing up for themselves. It's all great stuff. In fact, I love my Aries parent friends are the best at, championing for their kids. They are not afraid to step on people's toes. My mum's an Aries. They're not afraid. Great. I love it. They're not afraid to offend other people. She would be, if it's about protecting their kids.
Yeah. She's at the football matches cheering my brother on. She'd be at the theatre things that I was doing. Yeah. Defo.
Right. And that's fantastic. The challenge with fire energy is that it is harder for them to detach and see themselves and consider the other person's point of view. It's not impossible. It's just a little more challenging. So parents with a lot of fire energy in their chart, I always kind of throw that out there. Like, just make sure you're thinking about this. Well, how does this look to my child? Or what I just said, or how am I acting? How could my child possibly respond to this or take this? Obviously, because like you mentioned before, sometimes kids misunderstand things. And not every adult is a great communicator. Lots of adults, myself included, had to learn to be effective communicators in relationships. So it's up to the adult to communicate effectively to the child.
Well, God love my mum, because she'll cringe at this if she's listening to this, because I used to go and do something because I used to sing and dance and act and all of that stuff when I was younger. And I would go and do a show or whatever, and she would go, wow, that was really good. That was awesome. But you need to smile more. Or you need to do this more. And she was trying to, I know, and no offense, Mum, if you're listening, I know you were trying to do X, Y, and Z. You were trying to improve it. You were trying to go, and I find myself, but I stopped myself because of what happened with my mum. So I find myself going, oh, buddy, with his soccer, I'm going, you need to find space, buddy. You need to do, and I'm going, no, stop. Okay. He's 6. Right. Okay. Right. He will find the stuff that he needs to do more of. His coach will tell him, let me just say he was awesome, and go from there. But yeah, she used to say, and I used to go, oh, can you not just say that it was good? And she's like, she did, and she loves me and all of that stuff. And she'll be sitting there going, oh, but yeah, there were times where I went, I don't need to hear it, right? I don't need to hear that I smile. I don't need to hear your coaching tips, right? You're my mum. But yeah, and it was all out of a good place and all of that stuff. And and I don't know if she did it to my brother. I'm sure she did. But yeah, it's okay. It's good. But there were times as a kid where I'd go, oh God, okay. She'll probably phone me and go, I didn't know that was the case, blah, blah, blah. So,
right.
God love Aries. They're okay. And so I'm a Libra.
It's a great energy.
So I'm a Libra, which is an air sign, right? Mm-hmm. So are we so far up in the air that we don't really care? We're like, just leave it to the world.
I don't know if I would describe it like that. So Aries and Libra are opposite signs.
Yes.
Interesting. Which they're actually, it's compatible energy, because air and fire.
And my dad's a Libra and my mum's an Aries, and they've been married for 50 odd years.
Perfect.
I honestly don't know how they stay together, but however, obviously.
It's worked out.
Yeah.
They're opposite signs, so they are naturally compatible because the elements are compatible. Fire
and air
cannot exist without air.
Exactly.
Right. So Libra, as we said, very relationship oriented. The issue with Libra, and you can tell me if this,
here we go.
That, it's an air sign, so it's very detached, right? So it's easier to for the Libra person to put themselves in the position of the other person.
Yes.
sometimes too much. So that's the issue, is sometimes the Libra person risks identifying too much with the needs of the other person and subjugates, represses their own needs and wants. That is always a risk. So you have to, for Libra kids, in fact, I'm coming out with a video on how to parent Libra children on my YouTube channel next week. And that's the big
perfect
thing I'm talking about, right? Is you have to teach them to self-champion, stand up for themselves, to make sure they understand their needs are important too. Yes, the other person's needs are important, but so are theirs. So that's the big risk with Libra people, is that they identify so strongly with the needs of the other person in the relationship, whether it's partner to partner or parent to child, friend and friend, that they sometimes won't speak up for themselves.
Yes.
And I hear some parents describe Libra kids as, oh, they're such a good, well-behaved child. And that kind of, I don't like calling children well-behaved or not well-behaved, because difficult children usually are the ones that stand up for themselves, which is what I like to see. But when you well-behaved children, sometimes, not always, but sometimes that well-behaved trait comes from not speaking up for their needs because they are so intent on pleasing the other person. So this is not always apparent with the child, because the child won't come and say, well, I'm repressing my needs because I'm just doing what you want to do. They don't have the sophistication yet to make that clear, to communicate that clearly. So it's up to the parent to understand that about the child and engage the child and say, hey, are you okay with this? Or I haven't heard your opinion on this, or I haven't heard you say anything about what you want to do this weekend. What do you think? And kind of leave it open-ended like that.
Yes. And that's so yes. And yes. So my child, when I talk to his teacher at school and I say, is everything okay? Is he good? Is he, is there anything I need to be aware of? She's like, no, he's just such a pleasure to teach. And he's so good. And he's, or he's got loads of friends and, and I find that he's questioned and gone, such and such hit me today. And, that I wasn't very happy about it. And I said, did you go? And so he's told a teacher, which is good. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I wonder whether he just brushes that off, like you say, and he just gets on with, it was very difficult at the start with him to, he just didn't understand it. Why is somebody being nasty to me? Why has somebody said they don't want to play with me? And because for him, I don't think it's really in his nature, whatever, to actually do that. He's like all inclusive, even kids, so friends who have younger brothers and sisters. Normally as a kid you'd want to go, oh, we don't want the younger brother and sister coming along. Like, I've got a younger brother. It's like, oh, whatever. But you're all inclusive. He's all inclusive. So he goes and he plays with the whole of the family as such, like the sister who's like 2 years younger and the brother and things like that. So yeah. So it's quite funny.
He doesn't want anyone to be to be left out. He doesn't want anyone to be left out. So Libra is the great diplomat of the zodiac. It is a non-confrontational sign. They do not like direct confrontation. And if you think about air, the element of air is to go around obstacles, not confront them head on. All the air signs have that issue. They don't like to, that's my issue. I'm a Gemini sun. And a Libra rising. They don't like they don't like confrontation, but sometimes confrontation is necessary. Sometimes you have to tackle things directly. So, right. So, there's one thing, they don't like confrontation. And the symbol for Libra is the scales, right? We call it the scales of justice here. So it's balance the scale. So Libra is all about balance.
Well, it's about working with people, harmony.
Exactly. Diplomacy,
being a team,
in relationships.
blah, blah, blah.
Absolutely. So yeah, it doesn't surprise me, because he doesn't, like you said, it's not his nature to be aggressive like that. So he doesn't understand why the other children will be like that, but he's young. That will come with time, that other people are just different. And unfortunately, not everyone is as nice as him, or as, concerned about other people's welfare as him, or as inclusive as him. Unfortunately, that's the truth, right? That he'll learn as he gets older. And yeah. So yeah.
Wow. Okay. There we go. Okay. So how does all of this help us be better parents? I'm assuming that just knowing a bit about your birth chart and your child's birth chart and things like that, we then can have a bit more of a connection with our kids. as such?
Yes, absolutely. So if you understand what your child needs to feel emotionally safe, kind of how if they approach the world from a place of logic or a place of emotion or intuition, things like that, they tend to be more independent. If they tend to be, need more attachment from parents, like you say, that helps you form the attachment and connection. When you understand someone better, whether it's your child, your partner, a friend, you can better attach and connect with them. And that's the crux of a strong relationship. So that's exactly right. That's where we're coming from.
What about if you find out your child is like the complete opposite? Like, I'm a Libra, as I've said, I'm an air sign.
Mm-hmm.
Don't really deal with water. Mm-hmm. So that's Cancer. Is that Cancer, Pisces?
Right. Cancer, Pisces,
Scorpio, right? Mm-hmm. So,
right.
Which is hilarious because my brother's a Pisces. God love him. So,
wow.
Yeah. So how do you deal with your kid if it's like completely opposite from you?
It takes more effort. And that's my example. I'm a Gemini air sun with the Libra rising, air, right? With the Earth moon. My son is a Scorpio sun, water, right? And when he was younger, not so much now because he's older, but when he was younger, he would have these big emotional outbursts. And for me, it was very triggering because I was not allowed to show emotion as a child. So it's very triggering for me. I would freak out. And I was like, why is he being so dramatic? Like, I don't understand this, because I approach the world from a place of logic and detachment. He doesn't. He bonds very closely with the parent. So, whereas I needed more independence as a child, he needed more attachment. So I had to learn that. And I had to learn that when he needed comfort and empathy first before solutions. Like, I would go and solve problems for him and then not understand why he was unhappy. It's because he needed comfort and empathy first. And then as he got older, I would ask him, do you need me to do anything about this? No, I just need you to listen. Okay, then I'll listen. Right. I had to learn that. I had to train myself, and I had to train myself. So when he had these emotional outbursts, I would not freak out and yell and just, generally be triggered. I would force myself to be calm. And I would tell him, hey, whatever you're feeling is okay. Like, I understand you have big feelings right now. Like, do you need a break? What do you feel like doing? Let's just maybe go for a walk. And when I learned that, it's because Scorpio people need to feel. They would rather feel terrible than feel nothing. That is the crux of the Scorpio. They need to feel the entire range of like human emotions. So whereas it looks like, wow, they're being a negative person, or they're dwelling on these feelings, it's because they have to feel the feeling, right? They have to. And as kids, they just don't have the emotional regulation yet that adults do. So it comes out of these tantrums. Now, as my son got older, I modeled being calm for him, and he increasingly, like, those emotional outbursts got less and less dramatic. And now it's to the point that he'll get irritated and he'll go and put himself on a break, like go to his room and take a break. And then he'll come out 2 minutes later and say, I'm sorry I got irritated with you, or I'm sorry I snapped with you, or I feel this, or what you said kind of, it made me feel bad, or I felt bad because I felt like you didn't trust me when you said that. He's very articulate because I've worked a long time with him to identify the emotions, right? And I had to train myself to do that. That was not a natural thing for me. But that is right. So it does take more effort. But to your point about when the energies are so discordant, it is possible. You just have to understand the energy, read about it, study it, understand the energy, and then understand what you need to do to work with that energy.
Yeah. And you're right. At the end of the day, it is a work in progress, isn't it? These kids don't come with instructions. And so
parenting is hard.
God, nobody told me what was going on. Like, I had this idealistic, it's really funny when you get these comedians who say life before children was like all this idealistic, isn't it going to be great? And then they come into the world and you go, oh my God, what is this? This is like a whirlwind of pleasure and hell all together in one. Because there are times where you just go, I need to lock myself in the toilet and eat chocolate for 5 minutes because Jesus, I don't think I can cope. So yeah, no, I completely agree.
Yeah.
God love them. And it must be even worse if you don't, like, in a way, I feel as though I have a connection with my son because we're both same star sign. We're very similar.
Right.
And I am very much like, leave him be as such. Although he
Right.
would say I'm a little bit driven because I do go, right, come on, maths, blah, blah, blah. But I find it's good connection time as well, because then I get to hear about a few things that I'm going, oh,
Yeah.
like I heard about dance club and stuff like that the other day, and I didn't even know he was going. So, yeah, it's just a revelation.
I mean, spending one-on-one time together is the most important thing you can do for a connection. Where you're doing, it could be any activity. You could be watching TV together. You could be going on a walk together. You could be, I took my son to pick strawberries last week. It can be anything. It could be doing math exercises together. And then it's spending pressure-free time together that presents the space where they can then share things with you. And that's what it's those moments that over time build the connection.
So where do people find more information about what you're doing, and where you are, what's going on? Where are you? How do we find out about you? Sure.
So I publish regular parenting and astrology content on my YouTube channel, which is called Positive Parenting with Astrology with Maria Riegger. So that's a great way to get like your free regular parenting content. A lot of people ask questions in the comments and I address all those questions myself. And that's one of the best ways to connect with me. And I have my parenting books are on Amazon and Barnes and Noble and Kobo. I have a book called Your Scorpio Child for parents of Scorpios, and a book called Your Gemini Child for parents of Gemini children. And I do get comments from adults that like adult Scorpios and Gemini people who tell me that those books have been helpful to them reparenting themselves. So I find that they're also good for adults reparenting themselves, right? From the trauma and things we talked about, as well as for parents of those children. Right. But those books are available on Amazon, all the major retailers. And then you've
also got a YouTube channel.
That's right. Yes. It's called Positive Parenting with Astrology with Maria Riegger. And you can email me directly. I'm at maria@lawschoolheretic.com. And that's also where I blog, lawschoolheretic.com. So I publish some blog stuff and some astrology content on my blog.
Okay. Cool. That's brilliant. Look, thank you so much for coming and talking to me about this subject. I find it fascinating. And yeah, it's just so interesting about learning about different traits and different personality types in our kids and in us, and how we can, hopefully if knowing about them, we can try and do something about it. Final question, and I've changed up my questions this year. So my question this time, final question is, what book would you recommend to my listeners and why? And it can't be your own books. I'm just going to state that now.
Sure. No problem. I recently read a wonderful book. The author is Dr. Gabor Mate, M-A-T-E. He's a physician.
I know Gabor Mate. He is fantastic.
He's an expert in childhood trauma. He's fantastic. Well, he's published several books and he has several courses and seminars and on YouTube. He's got free content on YouTube, and I encourage every parent to check out his work. So the book I recently finished that he wrote is called Hold On to Your Kids. And it is about attachment and connection and how important it is to maintain the attachment with your children through adolescence and through the teen years. They start to gravitate toward their peers, but it is important that they do not fully orient toward the peers. They still need to accept guidance from the parents. And the book is all about how to do that and how kind of society doesn't really support that, because society kind of sends a message to parents that, well, kids gravitate toward their peers. That's normal. That's fine to have relationships with friends, but they still need attachment with the parents, even through the teen years and early adult years. And it's all about how to do that, how important it is. It was extremely validating for me to read, because a lot of the stuff he talked about, I did. And I would go have lunch with my son at school when he was in second and third grade. He needed some extra, attention. And he would ask me, can you come have lunch with me? And I was regularly, almost every day, going to have lunch with him. And I was almost the only parent that did that, right? I was lucky. I was working from home a lot, so I could do that. But I think some of the teachers thought it was weird. But for example, that's one of the examples he talks about in the book. So it was very validating for me to know that, wow, even though people think that's weird for me to do. It was a way I maintained the attachment with him. That was very important. So the book is excellent, really good read, great for every parent. Highly recommend.
Yes, and he's awesome. I've actually bought a course that he did on trauma and healing from trauma. He is a physician who basically practiced in Canada and practiced for many years with addicts. So that's where it's my that's my connection with it all, because I was like, well, I want to find out about this addictive stuff, and like why are people addicted, and what goes on, and is it just that they're self-destructive and like all of these things. And so he delves down a lot more into trauma and how it affects addiction and various different things like that. So that's really good. I'm listening to what's it called? I'm listening to it on Audible at the moment. It's a Gabba Mate one. What's it called? The Realms of Hungry Ghosts, which is his addiction book, which is basically, he talks about his time working with addicts, drug addicts, alcoholics. He goes into conversations that he's had with them, and then he goes into dealing with addiction in society and what we really should be doing, which is accepting it and accepting these people and not rejecting these people. So it's very it's very interesting. It's I've been listening to it a long time. I need to get the book finished this month. Cool. Thank you for that. Yes, I know him very well. I think he's awesome. Thank you. Look, thank you so much, Maria, for coming on the podcast. It's been really fascinating listening to everything. I wish you all the luck with everything that you're doing. Maybe we'll speak again soon about some of the other things that are, going on with you as well. Keep in touch. And thanks.
Thank you, Claire. Thanks so much for having me. I love talking about this stuff. It's so important. So I really appreciate it.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. Thank you so much again.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening. If you've enjoyed this podcast and you would like to hear more, please hit subscribe wherever you like to hear podcasts. If you would like to support us further, share this episode with your friends and family. And finally, drop us a review on iTunes, as I'd love to hear your thoughts, comments, and ideas. It all helps me to understand and produce awesome content you want to hear just like this. If you want to check out our past episodes, write to us, appear on the podcast, or for links, resources, and show notes, go to our website, www.strongsingleandhuman.com. We are also on all the usual social media platforms, Insta, Facey, and Twitter. I hope you have a wonderful week, and I hope to see you back here again soon. Be kind to yourself, and remember, no one is perfect. We're all just putting one foot in front of the other and doing our best. I'm Claire Martin, and you've been listening to the Strong, Single and Human podcast.